Alright, so here we have a Jun list. This one is pretty stock-ish. Um, it's similar to the one Steve Rubin played this past weekend. He took second at the Magic Online Championship in Seattle. So, and between different Jun lists, you'll only see a few card differences, maybe some different numbers, but you know when you're playing a Jun mirror match that it's almost, it's going to be very close. Like, maybe you have one card different than your opponent's, which makes you a small favorite, but in general, it's very back and forth, so it's going to be reliant on playing well, managing your cards correctly, and then sideboarding well. So the mana base it's a 3-color deck. I have 4 copies of Raging Ravine and 1 Treetop Village. Some of the more typical lists actually have 3 Raging Ravine and 2 Treetop. And then I also have 1 Twilight Mire, a host of fetch lands. Of course, the Blackleaf Cliffs is the one you want to have in your opening hand, because it is going to allow you to get that untapped land into play and then not take damage. Right now, the split between discard spells is 3 and 3 between Thoughtseize and Inquisition, and that's what most lists are playing. You don't want to have too many discard spells, but you also kind of want one to start off the game in a lot of matchups. And so here's kind of an interesting point of contention. There's 3 Lightning Bolts and 3 Fatal Pushes. Lightning Bolt was a 4-of for a while in almost every list, but it's actually not as good in the mirror as Fatal Push. So if you do have these Fatal Pushes, instead of maybe you trim a Lightning Bolt for a push, then your matchup against other Jun decks is going to be a little bit better. So that is nice. Now, against other decks where Fatal Push is useless, then you would rather have the Lightning Bolt, of course. So here are the 2 mana creatures. Some lists play 3 Scavenging Ooze. I'm actually at 2 right now. I found that to be enough because I don't really want to get flooded on them. Whereas the Tarmogoyf and the Dark Confidant are just super important creatures to the deck. Goyf is often going to be a 5/6, a 6/7 pretty frequently. And then Dark Confidant, if you're able to, say, play a discard spell on turn 1 and then follow that up with a Bob, it can just take over the game by itself if the opponent doesn't actually have an answer to it. Then we have a host of Planeswalkers. So Liliana of the Veil is the one we're used to seeing, and it's very versatile. It attacks the hand. So in a lot of matchups, you want to be attacking your opponent's hand, not just with these 1-mana discard spells, but also with the Liliana. And then it's a removal, of course, as well. Sometimes, hey, you even get to ultimate it. And then Liliana, the Last Hope, it is going to be really good against those creature decks that have those 1 toughness creatures where you can actually you can play it and then kill something and then have it on the board, or you can get one of your creatures back from the graveyard. Culligan's Command, similarly, is a very versatile card, also allows you to get creatures back from the graveyard, and it's going to be good in these mirror matches. You're going to want to have this card as a built-in 2-for-1. All of the modes are relevant, maybe not the artifact one as much, but the 3 other ones definitely are. Maelstrom Pulse is a card that can be a blowout if you're if you're able to set it up correctly. Other times it's just going to be 3 mana Fatal Push. It's going to be a little bit expensive for what you're getting. So it's something you want to manage efficiently, but it's an out to some of the more difficult permanents, like say a Blood Moon or a Leyline of Sanctity. Maelstrom Pulse is your go-to there. That is the card you need to answer those cards. And then, of course, the new addition to this deck is the unbanned Bloodbraid Elf. And the reason why you're seeing Jun pop up so much is this card. And it's also the most important card in these grinding mirrors where you really want to be able to just have as many 2-for-1s. And Bloodbraid, it can attack a Lily when it comes into play. It can cascade into something. It can completely change the game. So in the sideboard, we've got our Fulminators. This is going to be for control, for big mana decks, for even the mirror in some situations. And then Grafdigger's Cage against your graveyard decks and your company decks. And then we've got Kitchen Finks. This is a nice one of in the mirror. And against Life Gain. Grim Lavamancer and Anger of the Gods are against small creature decks, and then Grudge, of course, versus artifacts, and then we have Collective Brutality against the combo decks and against Burn. So yeah, in terms of sideboarding for the mirror, it's for me, everyone has their own preferences, right? Some players, they like to cut all of their discard spells to just have as many high impact cards as possible, and then have as many good hits off of a Bloodbraid Elf as possible. For me, I still like to have some discard. I feel like having a 1-mana play is going to be pretty important. Sometimes it'll help you situate a Dark Confidant, and it helps you navigate the game just having that information of what your opponent has. So discard spells are not traditionally great in these types of matchups. I like shaving on them. So I'll cut an Inquisition and cut a Thoughtseize and go down to 4 discard spells total in the mirror match. And I'm also willing to cut on Maelstrom Pulse. It's pretty unlikely that Maelstrom Pulse can be a 2-for-1 in the mirror match. It's more likely, actually, that Maelstrom Pulse is going to situate you into a situation where you and your opponent may have the same exact permanent on the board, and then it all of a sudden becomes really awkward. So Maelstrom Pulse is hit or miss. Similarly, Dark Confidant. Dark Confidant is one of the most powerful cards in the deck, don't get me wrong. However, if you are on the draw in the mirror, it's actually not quite as good as you would think, being that it gets hit by all of the removal, and Lily is a perfect play to minus and then get rid of it. So on the draw, I'm okay. Not cutting all the Dark Confidants, but once again, shaving. You have to sideboard very carefully in these types of matchups. You want to be able to go a little bit bigger than the opponent while still having enough answers to the I win situations like a turn 2 unanswered Dark Confidant. So what do? I actually go to cards like Fulminator Mage and Kitchen Finks. So these are your 3-mana high impact threats. Fulminator is a card, it's not widely agreed upon that this should actually be boarded in the mirror, but some of the games actually come down to a big Raging Ravine. Once a Raging Ravine gets a counter on it, it's actually pretty tough to answer. So Fulminator Mage is really nice. Sometimes you can actually just mana screw your opponent to win that way. Other times you just have it in play, and your opponent doesn't want to point a removal spell at it, because then you effectively get a 2-for-1, because you can use it to kill a land. And since there's not that many creatures in your deck, sometimes you just don't have a threat. You can use it as a threat. You can use it as land destruction. So it's actually versatile, and I like bringing them in. So I'll board in, say, 3 Fulminators and a Finks. So if I'm on the play, say, 3 Fulminators and 1 Kitchen Finks, and I'll take out 2 discard spells and 2 Maelstrom Pulse and just call it like that. If I'm on the draw, I like still boarding in this package of 3 Fulminators and a Finks, but I'm more likely to cut, say, only 1 discard spell, so 1 Thoughtseize, 2 Bobs, and then a Maelstrom Pulse. Once again, Bob on the draw on turn 2, it's actually just not as impressive as you would think. And then if you are on the draw, the discard is actually more important, just to be able to stop your opponent getting off to too quick of a start. So I'll go up, say, 1 discard spell. I think it's trimming. It's being careful with the numbers in the mirror. I do like Fulminators. I've been pretty happy with them. I've seen players who like boarding him in, some who haven't. I'm on the camp that likes the Fulminators, but I still like keeping in some discard. So I think that's kind of in the middle, in the in-between area of what players are doing these days. And that's going to be my approach to the mirror.